This bonus episode was brought to you by the Gakoids over on Patreon. Thank you so much for your support. And now, on to the episode.
Hello?
Maybe they're closed.
Welcome to Horrorland.
You could laugh and scream and get scared to death on rides and stuff up on junk food and ditch your parents.
Stay off the guillotine ride. Sharp turns.
No talking.
Who are you? I run this place, I do. And he's in there, all right. Just wait. Pick the right door and you go free. Pick the wrong door, and there he'll be.
Isn't she terrific? Kick it.
Here's your ticket, Gakoids, and let's get lost in a carnival of terrors here at our special amusement park edition of Are You Afraid of the Dark versus Goosebumps. I'm your ride operator, Brett.
And I'm your fun-loving carnival barker, Alex. And Brett, what rides are we going to experience today?
I think you know what we're in for, Alex. In Are You Afraid of the Dark versus Goosebumps land, there's chills, thrills, and spills all around us. It's just a matter of which radical ride we want to test out first, Zeebo's Spook House or the Horrorland game show. It's up to anyone's decision at this point. But before we get into the thick of things, who is our guest and carnival barker today?
Excuse me, lad.
Our guest is Mr. Greg Robinson. Welcome.
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So Greg, I'm kind of curious, what is your history with Are You Afraid of the Dark and Goosebumps growing up?
So they're like core memories for me. Like looking back, I don't know a time where like I remember being introduced to them. They just always kind of were. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I am the youngest of two, and my older sister was into both. And you know, if I don't know if you have older siblings, but when you're a child, you like want everything that they're into. You have to be into that kind of stuff. And yeah, she was big into Goosebumps and Are You Afraid of the Dark. We always had Nickelodeon on, and both of them were just things I was so attached to. But even though they like definitely terrified me, I needed more, you know. And it's funny because looking back, I watched a lot of TV, so I saw every episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark. But my experience with Goosebumps was not actually reading them; it was just looking at the covers. And that alone was all you needed. It's funny because I've brought that up with other people, and it kind of is the same reaction when you bring that up.
Isn't that surprising? Like, no one actually cared that much about R.L. Stine's writing. It was really all about Tim Jacobus's, mind-blowing acrylic paint art on all those issues. And that's what really just roped me in from, like, second grade onward. It felt like giant trading cards that had extra pages to it. You just wanted to look at them all together and, like, trade them with your friends to see what you can get.
Yeah, absolutely. We had like our childhood set and everything too, and it's funny because I mean you can look behind me and see I'm a big collector of vintage things. And there was one day when my sister was moving out of our parents' home, and she told me that she had donated all the old Goosebumps books, and I was like, why the hell would you have done that? And it was so upsetting, and I was like, shoot, like I would have taken them. She'd asked, and she apologized and stuff, and it's one of those bittersweet things because they're going to go to a kid that would actually want to read them.
Yeah.
But after that, I downloaded eBay, and so that's where my addiction kind of started. And it's funny because this copy is like the first vintage thing I ever purchased ever. So it's very important to me, actually. I have another one that I leave out. This one is kept away where I keep it safe and everything.
First edition.
Yeah.
Oh man, I totally relate to that pain, Greg, because as much of a noble cause as it was for me at the time to do, like around 2013, 2014, It still pains me to this day to not have them, considering like I did not have the foresight to hold on to my entire Goosebump book collection, even though I kept all of them in pristine condition after like going to Kmart on a Saturday with my grandmother with my allowance. So I mentioned this during our second Patreon episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark versus Goosebumps, which you should check out, by the way, where I ended up donating or like selling my my entire collection to one of my friends I grew up with in elementary school, who became an elementary school teacher herself. I've known her since first grade, and it seemed like a real full circle moment for me. And I'm like, you know what? I don't actually read these as often as I'd like. I might as well give them to some kids who can't afford books that would love to get into Goosebumps. So I had a real like Andy moment from like Toy Story 3 where he was like giving his toys away to Bonnie, except I was giving away the Goosebump books to her and her students who are in first grade. And I'm like, well, they've gone to a better place now. But now 8 years later, I'm like, damn it, I should have kept those and just bought some. So it's hard to predict the future sometimes, but at least some people appreciate the kindness that the gesture provides.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's good you can sleep at night knowing that some other kid gets to experience that, and maybe 20, 30 years from now on, he'll have a podcast about Goosebumps or something, or they'll have a podcast about Goosebumps.
Here's hoping, or maybe we can have them on the show if they find us.
Yes, exactly. It's funny though you mentioned about like reading Goosebumps and stuff, because I think I've read more Goosebumps as an adult than I ever did as a kid.
Me too.
Yeah. I always told myself I want to sit down and read all 62 start to finish, and I'll get through one or two and be like, I can't keep this up. It's the way they're written, everything. They're great for kids because they keep them reading and stuff, but there's no convincing me now in my 30s that when at the end of chapter 2 that something terrible is going to happen that quick on,
Yeah.
They always end on some big cliffhanger.
I was just going to say, they begin to become formulaic once you like notice the patterns after the first few books you get through.
Yeah, exactly. But Are You Afraid of the Dark? I watched religiously. I saw nearly every episode as a kid, and as an adult, I've caught up on it 4 or 5 times. I've rewatched it. I think starting when I was a teenager, and then again. I watch it all the time. It's one of those shows. It's a comfort show for me. I always have it on. I'm doing another rewatch right now. I am just upset those episodes are missing on there, because those are some of my favorite ones. Closet Keepers is one of my all-time favorite episodes of Are You Afraid of the Dark. So to not have that on Paramount Plus is a little upsetting, but there's other ways to find it.
Yeah, true. I mean, come to me. I'm master of Are You Afraid of the Dark.
Yes.
Unofficially.
You can do it officially now. It's been a long time, I think it's ready for us.
I wrote a book, and Nickelodeon isn't doing shit with the series aside from the reboot, so I might as well have a plaque on my wall that says "King of Are You Afraid of the Dark."
The cast,
you need the chair.
The cast and the creators are all well aware of your expertise of the show, and I think they would have no objection with that statement either.
Yeah, I just need to get the rights. Like, I need $10 million, go buy the rights from Viacom, and I can make my own Are You Afraid of the Dark universe. I already got plans. I got a script right here. I'll even show you guys the Tale of the Electric Ghost. I want to add it to Fire and Frozen Ghost with the whole Elemental trio. So, I got stories here. I just want to make them happen with some dough. But
I'll be the creepy ghost.
There you go. Yeah, you can be the actor. He's got a cool melted face, and he appears during thunderstorms. But we'll save that.
It's my chance to be one of the kids, episode. So it's time to be the villain.
Yeah. Well, funny we mentioned Frozen Ghost, because we're going to see a familiar face later when we do this versus. But before we get into the thick of this episode, quick question. What was your first Are You Afraid of the Dark episode that really left a deep impression with you, and also the first Goosebump book that you looked at or read?
If I had to say, Haunted Mask for sure for Goosebumps, both the show and the book. You know what? I should have grabbed it. I have the Haunted Mask right up there.
Like the actual mask?
But yeah.
Ooh.
That we had it on tape too, so it was like a constant rewatch for my sister and I. And I love Halloween. It's one of my favorite times of the year, next to summer, which I also love. That's part of one of those things from being a kid that just never left me. So yeah, Haunted Mask really stuck out. It was scared me and also intrigued me. I just adored everything about it, and I was almost scared to look at the cover sometimes. I was like, is this real?
Yeah.
When you're a kid, you really don't know. It kind of blends in between of what's reality and what's not.
Yeah.
As for Are You Afraid of the Dark, I don't know what maybe the first episode I remember. There's 4 or 5 that just really kind of stick out to me always. And it would be Laughing in the Dark, of course. I think most people would agree with that. Phantom Cab. I won't say Dead Man's Float. It almost came to mind, but I didn't see that until I was an adult. It's just the one that comes to mind anyways, because it's such a good episode.
Yeah, I love the special effects.
Yeah, Closet Keepers, 13th Floor both stuck out a lot to me too. I feel like I'm forgetting some big episode that's not coming to mind that would have stuck out to me.
Midnight Madness, Night Shift, Dangerous Soup, Quicksilver, Crimson Clown.
Crimson Clown, yes, for sure.
Yeah, I mean,
I just had a big discussion about that with some of my buddies about how much I hate the kid in that episode.
Yeah,
one of the most well-written little brats I've ever seen.
Turd face, as he would put it.
Oh, he's such a scumbag. You know, he could have got it a lot worse. He got off pretty easy. You know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think enough people wanted to punch him on the Are You Afraid of the Dark crew that he decided to hide in Goosebumps land for the Werewolf of Fever Swamp as a character. So I think he's safe over there now with his career.
Oh, you know what? Okay. Gilbert Gottfried episode. Is that Phone Police or is that Station
109.1?
Okay, I get the titles mixed up because when I was a kid, I didn't pay attention to the titles. I just watched it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Station 109. That one always stuck out to me too because of Gilbert Gottfried for sure.
Hell
Rest
yeah.
in peace. He was great. Great episode too. One of my favorites still to this day.
Yeah, it's great. It's got that perfect balance of comedy and terror with like the imagery and his quick-witted jokes.
What's the matter? You stayed with the hearse too long? Is that it? Yeah, well, that happens.
You know what? I actually have a really good Are You Afraid of the Dark related memory too. I will share really quick.
Okay.
When did Silver Sight is the 4-part?
It's the 3-part trilogy from season 7.
3, whatever. Yeah. So when that premiered, I remember we were on a family vacation. My cousins and my siblings were there. And we watched the whole thing start to finish. I remember we went to Taco Bell and ate and got Choco Tacos. And it's something my sister and I would still bring up all the time too. And it's funny because it's such like a core memory that sticks out to me of like just sitting there watching it and everyone enjoying it and everything too. And I always will remember it's the eye on the horse, right? And the carousel. Yeah. Yeah. It's that stuck out to me. And I don't know why, but
not all the eyes are brown.
They replayed it like 4 times. So yeah. Great episode. It's a shame the later seasons aren't remembered as well. I know their quality isn't as good, but they're still solid enough. You know, it's part of the series.
Thank you. I'm glad someone else other than me has said it. Yeah, I mean,
fully agree.
I think we're just gonna have to cover season 6 and 7 at some point, so we can't have any blind haters listening to our podcast. Looking at you, fiance. But you know, because the DJ McHale did come back for those seasons. And he had most of the production crew from the original 5. It was just, you know, a 2-year gap when they weren't interested in doing those types of shows at the time. And Goosebumps filled that gap when they did their show. So it's like they kind of traded places and they have this very, you know, dynamic dance going on with both TV and their print media.
You guys may know this more. Did their production teams work on either?
Yeah, there was some trade-offs, especially Ron Oliver and David Winning, who worked on both.
Okay. Yeah, I was always curious about that.
Yeah. Quick, Alex, before we turn this into a 3-hour episode, what was your first Are You Afraid of the Dark episode and Goosebump book that you were exposed to?
Book, I don't remember. I do remember going through the Scholastic Book Fair and seeing Goosebumps there for the first time. I don't remember which one. I do remember it was fairly early within the run. And I do remember that I remember when it premiered. I remember seeing commercials for it. It was a big deal. And very much like Greg, I was very, very much into the artwork, and I never read a single book. But there was a bit more of a reason to that, because my mother was very anti anything horror. So I couldn't have... Ernest Scared Stupid was probably the most frightening thing in my house. I couldn't have anything, and I wasn't allowed to read the books, and I knew if I asked her to get it or if I could check it out from the library, it'd be a big no, because I had to get her permission to check out anything. So no, I never read any of the books, but I did watch the premiere VHS because I didn't know when it was coming out. My cousin had the VHS, and I got to borrow it. Mom didn't know. And but that was my first exposure to Goosebumps, and I didn't start reading until I was introducing it to Sam, and then it started from book 1. And in terms of Are You Afraid of the Dark? Laughing in the Dark. Simple as that.
Yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong with that. That's pretty much the show's golden boy.
Yeah.
It is phenomenal. Rewatching it, I was like, man, even the production value of this is so high compared to
How did
like,
they
what you'd
nail it
expect
in
out of
episode 2?
Exactly, yes.
I really need to pick DJ McHale's brain a little bit more about that. I just remember him mentioning on a few podcast interviews that he was like really taking it all in when they were building the set of the spook house on the sound stage, and he was like, you know, this is really cool, you know, and just imagining, like, you don't think people are going to be scared of this 7-foot dummy clown when we show him on screen, do you? As he's talking to, you know, prop master Bill Bonecutter, and he's like, nah, I think it'll be just fine. And then all of a sudden, ah! You know, millions of kids at home when Zeebo first made that, you know, appearance right even before the tale started formally, and, you know, everyone was hooked from that point. I don't know why, but it just had that it factor at the right time, at the right place that really, you know, struck a chord and made its mark like a cow brand in your brain for the rest of 90s kids' lives everywhere.
Yeah, I was a very frightful child, so I stayed away from the first iteration. From anytime it was on at first, no. And then one night I was going, all my friends at school are watching this show, and I don't want to go to school on Monday and be that little scaredy cat. So I'm going to watch this episode. I'm going to watch it. I'm going to stick through. And it was Laughing in the Dark. And I got to the dummy. And then I changed the channel immediately. And then I had got the courage to go back up, and I, you know, the previous channel button on the remote control, went back to it. And then Zeebo comes out of the door, and I'm like, ah, crap, and changes it right back. I was done. It took me a long time to go back to Are You Afraid of the Dark after that.
He was hiding in the closet waiting for you, Alex.
I mean, it was perfect timing. It was absolute perfect timing.
Yeah. I was the same way with dark music, and it's funny how, like, the ones we're most scared of as a kid still last with us today, and, like, somehow turn from, like, something that we're afraid of to something that we love. And I think that just ages with time, with, like, our memories becoming more nostalgic.
Yeah.
Good picks.
It's crazy to me when you see some of these props and puppets and stuff, because that's usually what sticks out to you the most in everything, because it's so real. You know, it's something that can't be captured with CGI, and I am so grateful that they had such good prop makers and everything. Yes, it's because they're just so tangible to look at these things and like be like, wow, that really exists somewhere. Like, is this real?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take practical effects any day over, like, you know, CGI graphics, like the money for nothing blocky characters from that music video. I don't care if it's cutting edge; it's not the same. But real quick, I'll answer the questions before we formally introduce our Versus episode. Mm-hmm. My first book was The Headless Ghost, number 37, which is funny because my lucky numbers are 3 and 7 in life. And my mom brought that home for me one day from Walden Books at the Meriden Square Mall, because I lived in Connecticut growing up. And I just remember, whoa, what is this? Like, I was just blown away by the colors and the presentation of the art. I've never seen any, like, book cover art like this before. It's usually, like, very simple and cartoony, like Eric Carle's Very Hungry Caterpillar, or like an Arthur book. And this was just like, it looked like a portal into another world that I could literally get sucked into just by looking at, like, a mirror or something. And I couldn't put the book down. As soon as she gave it to me, I read it for the rest of the night. I nearly missed school the next day because I couldn't put it down. I even took it with me in my backpack, and I was just hooked. And the moment that, you know, I got that little paper Scholastic Book Fair magazine in class to, like, check off the books, I went boom, straight to the Goosebumps and Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark books right there. Check them all off, give it to my mom. She's like, $50 on books? No way. Here, you can get like $20 worth. And then I had to be more choosy. But the point is, you know, it just had something about it that I couldn't look away from. And it's one of the reasons why I'm an artist today, because I was just so much in awe of the art style and the way that Tim Jacobus stylizes things with his like curved perspective and like really balances that like whimsical cartooniness with like a sense of realism and detail. And oh my, the way he uses colors to paint a mood is just brilliant. So that's my first exposure through the books. I also watched the Haunted Mask VHS tape with my sister during Halloween, and I was hooked with that from the get-go as well. Love the mask, love the story and all that. And then I went to go read the book afterwards. And then with Are You Afraid of the Dark, it's right at the beginning with Phantom Cab. I watched the premiere in like August 15, 1992 with my dad on SNCC because he had to chaperone me or like stay up with me because it was later than my bedtime at the time. And the moment that fake Tom Arnold spun his head 180 degrees saying, "I sort of died," I was like scare-sighted, like, whoa, what is going on here? But at the same time, like, I want to watch that next week, Dad. Can we? I'll think about it. Yeah.
Love that.
30 years later, look where we are now, still going strong.
I wish I could go back and tell myself as a child that I would be into the same exact things, all these years later.
Yeah. It's a good thing to get involved with because the community is really just a fun group of people to like talk about all the details of the show with.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Well, enough about reminiscing and traveling down memory lane. Let's get into an all-star brawl with our verses. I'm going to glove up here and knock some lights out because LL Cool J told me to at this carnival because apparently I'm judging. So boom, boom. It's time for verses. There's the logo. All right, so for our Versus episode, we are doing, of course, as we mentioned before, Laughing in the Dark versus One Day at Horrorland, 2 powerhouse episodes from each of their series that deal with like an amusement park theme. And our categories today are going to be 1, main characters, 2, villains, 3, story, 4, use of the amusement park theme, and 5, lasting appeal, or like, does it hold up today? Is it still scary? That sort of thing. And we're just going to alternate between our 2 defenders right here. Alex will be defending Horrorland, and Greg will be defending Laughing in the Dark. And, at the end of those rounds, we'll do like a final appeal, and then we'll tally up the score, see who wins, and, do a round of rename game and maybe another segment if we have time.
Sorry, my lad. I didn't mean to scare you. Gonna give it a go, huh?
Hey, you folks look fabulous. Now, nothing to be nervous about. Just smile and play the game.
Let's go.
Let's do it.
All right. So, category 1, let's move right into main characters. Alex, would you like to start?
Sure. All right, so I hope everyone appreciates the fact that I'm so into this that I have actively gone out and gotten myself sick so I can have a spooky voice while I do this episode. So that way I can do everything super creepy.
He's creepy. He gives me the creepies.
But for this episode, we're doing main characters, for this category, main characters. And it's not just 1 or 2, it's kind of the whole family. The main focus the main focus is the 2 kids, of course, because it's Goosebumps, and you've got a brother and a sister, Luke and Lizzie, but you do have the mom and dad, and they are the Morris family. And in true Goosebumps and horror kids fashion, they have moments of being okay. Most of the time, they're just jerks to each other. But less so jerky than some of the others that I've seen in previous episodes. They're still a family unit, and they're still very much about supporting each other. It starts off, they just seem like a bunch of punks. Dad's not wanting to pull over. Mom's trying to look out for the kids, and then after a while, even mom's in on, hey, let's get this car. Who cares about the expense of the children? Let's keep go for this car.
What kind of a car is it?
A brand new sports utility vehicle.
Dad,
Well, we all sure could have loads of fun with a brand new sports utility vehicle.
And the brother he's just annoying, just the constant whining. I want to go here, I want to do that, how much longer? And just incessant whining until it's no longer fun. And then, okay, I'm ready to go. And the sister is the one who's trying to keep everything together, and she's the glue. But eventually they do settle their differences, and they do work together as a group. And that's and I think because it's a two-parter, we see that more than we see them against each other. But that, in a nutshell, is the main characters. While you go to Greg, I'm gonna go get something to drink. I'll be right back.
Sure. Get some tea.
Would you children like some tea?
I do. Hot tea on a cold night.
On to you, Greg. Let us know about the main characters in Laughing in the Dark.
So Laughing in the Dark is interesting because you have Josh and Ouija are the two main characters.
Ouija board?
Josh is the little brat, and Ouija is the straight man to him. They're two very typical kids. You don't get much characterization of them versus the fact that they're just two, 12-something-year-olds, And Josh is bullied at the beginning of the episode, even though he tries to push himself off as being like the arrogant, tough guy kind of, but he's too scared to even go into the spook house, which culminates in the rest of the story and everything. As far as characters go, they're not very strong. They're more so just a vehicle to tell the story, Josh being the character that gets his comeuppance. He gets a little bit more characterization as you follow him, but overall I'd say the most important character would be Zeebo himself, who is the villain, and he is probably the greatest thing about the entire episode.
Well, you can go into detail for our next category, since that foreshadows
Awesome.
it. Cool. Well, that was short and sweet and to the point, unlike our intro to this episode.
Most of mine most likely will be.
Not a problem. Let's move on to villains and talk about some of the characters who oppose our main characters in both of these stories.
All right, villains for Goosebumps, and that's very much it. It's very plural. This is Horrorland, and it is full of monsters, and I mean it is full of monsters, and they range from goofy to menacing, and goofy and menacing to I want to help you, to okay, nope, no I don't, and then back to just be. It's full of them. And of course, when they first, they're seen as like the costume mascots when they first arrive, and which is fitting because that's what they are. But there's a variety of them, where some are. You have one that's carrying a severed head, and then is mocking the head while they're walking away.
What are you doing?
Told me I could talk to strangers.
That was a bit much.
And then you have some that are in fun costumes. And I mean by costumes, it's not even a costume. It's just a jacket. But they pop up to take tickets, or they pop up to sell a drink. And of course, they're like, hey, I like your costume. Like, thank you. But even then, especially in part 2 when they're on the TV show, they're playful and there's a lot of banter, but it's an underlying menace throughout, which is much more of a mind trip than just straight boo scare. But I don't think that they are particularly frightening. I think probably what's more frightening is what we've seen off camera. Or what has taken place off camera, which would be the monsters that built the place, because the rides themselves are where the real scare comes from. And then you also have in part 2 Ripper, this demon dog that's gonna half werewolf that's gonna eat the family at one point, which we'll get to when we get to story. But mainly it's just the monsters, and there is a dog But again, the rides are the big thing, and I consider that partially villains too, because they had to make this thing. So there you are. There is villains for Horrorland.
Sounds good. Greg, what do you have to say? What do you have to say about the villains in Laughing in the Dark?
So the villain of Laughing in the Dark, I go back and forth on whether or not there's two or one villain, because as a kid I always thought that the carnival barker was one and the same with Zeebo. Zeebo being the clown that previously worked at the theme park and passed away in a fire from his horrible addiction to nicotine, of smoking cigars all the time.
Yeah.
So after the fire that he sadly passes in, they rebuild it and enact a puppet of him inside of it as a prop. They're not very menacing to begin with, because Ouija and Kathy are able to go into the ride totally fine. You see other characters riding the ride and it's totally fine. Just a typical fun house, if not super creepy and weird. And Zeebo only becomes a villain once the brat Josh decides to make good on his bet to steal the clown nose from him, and then he really becomes the demonic menace that he is.
Yeah. Could you elaborate a little bit more on how Zeebo becomes more of a threat to the main characters once his nose is stolen?
I always liked that he was kind of this character that was always seen off screen. You never know if he's really there. You see maybe an apparition of him in a mirror. You might see some smoke coming from behind a building maybe, or under a door frame, but you never know if he's actually there. And I really liked how they did that. He's just this really cool off-screen kind of monster, and it really builds a suspense of when you want to figure out like is he really being chased? Is this maybe the friends pulling a prank on him or anything? And yeah, he is a terror. The phone scene is legitimately really creepy, and I love it. That was one of my favorite parts of the entire episode.
Come on. Come on.
Hello?
Ouija, this is Josh. I'm...
Josh, slow down.
Tell me the truth. Did you call at my house before and pretend you were Zeebo?
Whoa, what's the matter, Josh? You sound kind of scared.
I'm not. Yeah, okay. I'm scared. I was scared on the ride, and I'm really scared now. Was that you?
Give me a break. Why would I...
What was that? Is that you, Kathy? Put down the phone.
Josh, we only have one phone. It's gotta be at your house.
If you don't give it back, I'll come up and get it.
Who was that? Josh, you there?
And keep in mind, this was before Phone Police aired and even the movie Scream, so they were ahead of its time with like the murderers calling from inside.
Yes.
Yeah, I big kudos for them like figuring that out early on.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to second, just jumping on the Are You Afraid of the Dark for a moment, but I do want to second the idea that as a kid and hearing from others after that had finished the episode that I thought it was Zeebo who was going around, watching it again as an adult, I didn't see Zeebo. I didn't see it as Zeebo. I saw it as the Barker. I either that or like Greg had suggested, also just his buddies playing a prank, trying to get at him. But I could see it more being the carnival barker, because you or even if or a combination of all three. While he's inside, they get the barker to go along with. But I mean, the fog underneath could just be cigar smoke that was coming through. And
I just loved that they really kept him off screen. It really builds up the threat of this guy who could be chasing you.
Everything that happened, there's no real supernatural element to it. It's all practical things that anyone could do that would play mind games on him. So it could be Zeebo. It could be just anybody who's combined to play a prank.
Don't give anyone ideas. You never know. Someone might be blowing up a balloon underneath the door.
Uh-oh. Is it purple? Does it have marker rating on it? If so, run away now. Call the Help Me Clown hotline where we'll solve all your clown break-in needs. 555-ZEEBO. That's 555-ZEEBO. Call now. I feel like I just did an impromptu roundhouse sketch. What is wrong with me?
It's getting in your bones.
It is. It is.
Are you lonely? Looking for someone to talk to? Somebody who understands? Then call 1-555 lonely. At 1-555 lonely. You can talk to people just like you who are willing to listen. Call now.
I'm still coming down from that anniversary episode.
That was a good episode.
It was. Okay, well, yeah. Thank you both for sharing your perspective on the villains. Let's move on to our third category, which would be story. Alex?
Story. We have a family who is stranded out in the middle of nowhere, completely lost inside their vehicle, sweating straight down to their balls, trying to figure out how to get to Zoo Gardens. And of course, their kids are trying to go somewhere. Mom's wanting to, or kids are like, can I get out, please? And then mom's, can you just go ask for directions? I don't do that.
Dads were very much like that in the 90s. Same with Don Wrigley of the King of the Road Pete and Pete episode.
But they eventually decide to go forward and, all right, we'll see what I can find. And up ahead, it just looks like fire just coming out of the sky. And now all of a sudden this sign of Horrorland has now shown itself. And of course the kids in the back are, ooh, this looks like fun. This is good. Ooh, it's supposed to be someplace scary. I want to go. Can we go? I want to go. Do you want to go? I want to go. Okay, you want to go? Here we go. Okay, fine, we're going. And they go. And at first it seems fine. It just seems like people in costumes. And they start seeing some like Halloween Town effects. I'm sorry, the effects in the first Halloween Town movie, Disney fans, it's not that great. It's what it looks like. But they're going around with this really spooky theme all the way throughout the entire theme park. And everyone, quote unquote, in character, being monsters of all sorts. And whenever they're going inside, they're allowed in for free, and there's security cameras constantly watching them. And the dad just lets the kids go out. Go ahead, go through this theme park by yourself with no adult supervision whatsoever. But again, also in his defense, there's like no one there. You do see some family in the background occasionally, but for the most part, it's you just see them. And then the kids start going into different rides, and each ride it pushes the boundary for what is okay and what's not okay. And of course, by the end of all the rides, the Luke is very much just, well, it's supposed to scare you. That's the point. Until he officially gets scared, and now he's changed his mind. Let's go. And they get together with the mom and dad. And they decide, all right, yeah, I don't like this. This is creepy. This no bueno. Let's leave. That is the end of part 1. Going into part 2, they decide to leave, but the monsters end up. No, they get to the gate. Gate's locked, and there is a sign that says, "No, you cannot leave. No exit." And gonna go talk to the manager to complain, like that's really gonna do anything. And what they end up getting is they are shoved into a TV studio where they have been unwittingly been on a hidden camera TV show, which is kind of in a way like What Would You Do, which kind of I thought was fun. And being shown security footage from when they were on all the rides and how scared they were getting, and all the monsters laughing at the kids' expense. And now they are also put in a game show, which was called Raw Deal, which was essentially Wheel of Fortune. And the prize was a brand new SUV. But the parents kept getting everything right. And then the kids got nothing right. And they would have horrible things done to them. Mostly just worms dumped on top of them. Could have been far worse.
And snakes too.
And then, yes. By the end of it, they got to play another game, which was essentially, let's make a deal. You know, pick door number 1, pick door number 2. First of all, cut this deck, and if you get the card, then you'll get a chance to win the car. And okay, it's prolonged a little bit. And then they go to the doors. Pick this door, pick that door. And something we'll see in the other episode as well. And the one door, you'll see a monster. Door number 2, you'll get a car. One of the doors, you get a car. Of course, they don't get the car. They get the monster that's going to eat them alive. And there is one monster who, as they are about to be eaten by this demon dog, I don't know what it's called, I'm just calling it that, lets them out because he's offended that this moron, who is the host of the game show, I could have done better. He took it from me. So no, I want to ruin his day. You guys get out and leave. All right, so now they're going to leave, and they're being chased by monsters as they're trying to exit. They get to their car, and they start it up. And, of course, the mom's got to have one more dig because the car is still having trouble. And then, of course, the mom goes, hey, we wouldn't have this trouble if we got that new car. Like, thanks, Mom. I appreciate that. And then they finally get going, and then it leaves. And now they've lost control of the vehicle because on the previous episode, we see a manhole cover removed, a monster hand come up and place a little remote control on the bottom of the car. So now the host of the game show is now controlling the car and then puts them on the edge of a cliff to where they're teetering right over the edge. And of course, the punchline, oh yes, it's a real cliffhanger here, folks. And then the show ends with a couple of monsters just talking, oh, I'm done with these silly human shows. Well, how about we just sit here and talk? That's a good idea. Here, have some cockroaches. End of the episode. There's your story for One Day at Horrorland.
I am sick of these scary human shows.
That was a very riveting tale, Alex. I feel like it was action-packed, full of detail.
You know, I haven't watched that episode in a while, and now I feel like I just have watched it because everything came back immediately.
Yeah, brilliant synopsis. All right, so Greg, can you tell us a little bit about the story behind Laughing in the Dark?
So Laughing in the Dark starts with a nice cold open, which is rare for Are You Afraid of the Dark, at least later on as the show goes. I really like that they did that. And we see our two main characters at a theme park, and they want to ride. Well, they're riding a bunch of rides and everything, and they get some really good action shots of the theme park. And I've loved that they filmed at an actual Six Flags. It looks really great.
Wasn't
so we
that
follow
at,
the two.
Sorry, just to interrupt you.
No, go ahead. Absolutely, go ahead.
I thought I heard rumors that it was like based off of Playland in Rye, New York. Is it actually Six Flags, or was it like a mixture of different amusement parks?
So they filmed at Six Flags La Ronde in, I believe they were in Montreal. I recently did some research into it, like about a month ago, just to see, because I was like, this is awesome. I thought it was stock footage, but no, they're actually there.
Cool.
So we follow the two main characters onto the ride called, is it just the Laughing in the Dark?
That's what they refer to it as, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So for the spook house, the haunted house, and the main character Josh is dared. He's too chicken to go in. So when he totally chickens out going, later on he bets that he is not chicken and is willing to go in to steal Zeebo's nose. So the episode mainly follows Josh's little escapades with going to prove that he is not a chicken and that he can go in and actually do it. So I'd say the bulk of the story follows him as he experiences like the creepiest ride ever for kids, with like actual shooting out at him and like legitimate danger he's put in through.
Yeah. Don't forget that fire-breathing dragon.
Yes, what was that about, man? They
no fire code
really
in Canada.
Up the ante on that one. Yeah.
Right. Little hot hiney.
I guess they wanted to add insult to injury about Zeebo burning alive in it.
Yeah, jeez.
So as he makes his way through the ride, you keep seeing hints of Zeebo and everything too. He's featured on the outside of the ride on the facade that they have out there. Yeah. And you get a really good scene of him going through the mirrors, and he's joking around that Zeebo isn't even real. He's kind of second guessing, like, why was I even scared to begin with, when Zeebo himself maybe appears and is for sure the scariest part of the entire episode, legitimately creepy even today.
Look at me, I'm Zeebo. Zeebo. Hand over the dough.
What do you think I am, some kind of clown?
What do you think I am, some kind of clown?
They did a phenomenal job on the costume, everything. So eventually he gets to the end of the ride where he's faced with maybe like 9-10 different freaky looking doors in this end room. And as he keeps trying them, he realizes that he still didn't get the nose. So he finally makes his way to the door where you see the actual Zeebo, which is like the creepiest damn puppet I've ever seen. I still think about it all the time. And whenever I bring up Are You Afraid of the Dark, it's the thing that sticks out to people the most is that damn clown. So Josh himself is able to take the nose and prove Ouija wrong that he wasn't chicken enough. The terms of their bet was that Ouija had to wear the nose for an entire month, I believe. But that kind of goes out the window as Ouija throws it away and Josh takes it back home. And when Josh returns home, he finds out his family's gone. And the story keeps following him as he may or may not be being stalked by Zeebo the clown. As you see a balloon come out from under the door, the door handle's been tried, cigars in his food that he had cooking, just a lot of really bizarre stuff. And he finally decides, screw it, I'm going to put the nose back. So he runs back, and for some reason he's able to get to the theme park, even though it's definitely not open in the middle of the night. And right out of the ride where he replaces the nose and leaves him with a nice gift of some cigars.
Just to show there's no hard feelings? Cigars. All for you.
How did he get those?
There's a really great scene at the end too where you see the nose magically put back on the clown.
Yeah. So that's it?
Yeah, that's it.
Cool. Yeah, both very riveting tales, dramatically different styles, but I think
Yes,
both
very
are
much.
engaging
Absolutely.
in their own right, and I'll talk a little bit more about that for the final verdict. Alex, will you carry us through the use of the amusement park theme, because that is our next category.
So there is just about every aspect outside of waiting in line that is shown for Horrorland, all the way down to going through a parking lot, seeing signs all over the place, costumed mascots, having to go through the ticket stand, security cameras everywhere, even theming of the park, which of course we know this is Horrorland. They're intent to scare kids. But I mean, even here, where I live, relatively close, there is a theme park called Holiday World, and there is a Halloween section of the theme park. And of course, they've got Halloween-themed spooky decor and facades all over the place. And it's very much in line with what they've done for this episode, albeit a lot more, because they have the budget to do that for the theme park. Whereas in this episode, it's sparse and farther between, but they're on a budget for the show. They would do more if they could, but they do have that facade and things like that all over the place. You've got the snack shack where they're offering Monster Punch, which just happens to be like the blood from the tip of his finger. House of Mirrors, which was one of the frightening, fun house things. Instead of a mirror maze, it was just House of Mirrors, and the walls began to cave and potentially squash the people inside. But a trapdoor opens and they fall through. And then they also went on a coffin cruise, which was kind of a combination of your traditional log ride, but also the lazy river that every theme park has. But you're inside the coffin as it goes through. And probably the biggest departure is the TV studio, but also not really a full departure, because if you're listening to this podcast, you're already well aware Nickelodeon Studios is a thing. It was a TV studio and a theme park. This idea is nothing new. So Universal Studios, they would make TV shows there. Wheel of Fortune, which was an inspiration for what they did in the thing, they filmed their show a few different places throughout the country, and they filmed some of theirs over at Universal Studios Hollywood. And then, of course, the hidden camera thing is something that we've seen on What Would You Do? So that's also not an uncommon thing either. But they've used just about every aspect that you would find at a theme park, all combined into this one 2-part story.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty thorough there. Greg, how about you? How does Laughing in the Dark utilize the amusement park theme?
So it uses the theme park more so as like a vehicle for just telling the story, because it really focuses more on the ride, not on the park itself. I like I said, I really appreciate they filmed in an actual theme park. It looks really good on when they filmed and everything, and it really helps build the setting. It feels believable that these kids are actually in this theme park, and this really maybe you're right out there. The ride itself is really well done. It's mostly believable. If I was as an adult, I know it would never exist, but as a kid watching it, you're like, maybe this is really kind of out there, this kind of really like creepy thing somewhere hidden in a theme park where this clown may have perished and may still continue to be there. And they did such a good job on building the actual ride on set too, because it looks so good. It looks like you could actually ride it, honestly.
Coming in, Mr. Brave Young Man.
Even though it's more of a walkthrough than a ride, as most haunted houses would be. At least maybe for that time, especially for an older theme park like that. That theme park I looked into was built in the 50s. I did want to mention, it was interesting that you brought up the Playland thing, because there really was that, I cannot think of what the ride was, but all the people that died during the ride really happened. I believe it was at Playland, and them writing that into the episode adds even a little bit more to the realism of it,
That was even added in Silver Sight when they had to find Bruce McGorrell's brother for one of the last record pieces. So it continues on through the Are You Afraid of the Dark overarching lore.
Yeah. So really, it's not so much about the theme park as much as it is about the ride. But I do appreciate they filmed at an actual theme park, and it looks so good. It looks like the kids are really, they are really there. That's the reality of it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that leaves us with our last category, which would be lasting appeal, or is it still scary today? Alex, would you like to tell us why One Day at Horrorland is scary today?
we know that this particular 2-part episode of Goosebumps has got quite the uphill battle against Laughing in the Dark. I will openly acknowledge that, but it is still a very worthy set of episodes. Is it still scary? Yeah. The idea that of being at a theme park and anything could happen, that alone is terrifying. I've got to look this up while I'm thinking about it, because what was the movie about a kidnapping at Disney World? Escape from Tomorrow. This is a real movie, and it was actually filmed at Disney World.
Like at the Tomorrowland section?
Yes.
Whoa.
Now it was against Disney's wishes. Let me see.
I keep that positive public image. Ho-ho.
Yes. Escape from Tomorrow is a 2013 independent horror movie. Tells the story of an unemployed father having increasingly bizarre experiences and disturbing visions of the last day of his family vacation at Walt Disney World.
Wow.
And they actually went there and were filming things very guerrilla style. And I think even at one point the kids were taken, and he's trying to find them throughout the theme park. Imagine that. Horrorland. It's still a frightening concept, and that's just an ordinary, everyday, happiest place on earth. And then now imagine that being a theme park that's all about scaring the bejesus out of you. And the claustrophobic is something that people have, or claustrophobia is something that people really struggle with, and you have 2 experiences of this throughout the episode, one with the mirrors and then one with the coffin. And there's also it's a bit more of a mundane thing, but public speaking or being in front of a large group of people, that can be terrifying to some degree for some people. And also just the ear creep factor of having to deal with worms and snakes. And I mean, we all know that one person, or could be that one person, who would just break a sweat at the even thought of this. So is it still scary? Yes, it is. Does it still hold up? Yes, it is, because there are still people who are making this kinds of things, even in modern day times. Has it held the test of time in a warm place and nostalgic place in our hearts? Greg already answered that by saying that was the first book that he purchased for his nostalgic dive on eBay. When Goosebumps 2, the movie, was being made, there was a lot of speculation that they were going to do Horrorland. That's not what they ended up going with, but that was what fans were really wanting. Again, nostalgic properties not listening to the fans. But yes, it's still very much a relevant thing for audiences and something that people still cherish today.
Excellent point, Alex. I do want to add that in my research for both of these episodes, for this Patreon episode we're doing, I did find out that One Day at Horrorland is actually the people's choice for top read Goosebump book out of all of them. Even more than Say Cheese and Die or even Night of the Living Dummies. So it goes to show you that there's a really deep visceral appeal about it that none of the others quite have, in terms of anything could happen, feeding into the fear of the unknown once you step into a realm that's unlike anything else you've been in, or it's a warped version of reality. So
absolutely.
There's that. There's also Goosebumps 2000 book, Return to Horrorland, that was a continuation of that, but a little bit darker. And then, of course, the Horrorland series, which was around 2008, 2010, when I fell off the bandwagon of the books, and they just kind of expanded it into its own series so they can go into detail about specific rides, or trying to work in previous tropes like Slappy and the Haunted Mask as attractions for character development. It's really building its own ethos in its own way, in contrast to Laughing in the Dark, where the fans have built up that lore around Zeebo and trying to understand him better, and also just keep his spirit alive through their attention. So great summary overall.
Thank you.
I was actually just going to add about Horrorland, if I can go to bat for Horrorland for a second.
Sure.
I personally do think the story isn't really, I don't know. It doesn't compare to Laughing in the Dark. It's still solid, and I love the twist ending. Everything is so bizarre about it. But I love what they did post-book with the brand. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I really appreciate that they did the sequel. They did these two books that I also have. I don't know if you ever heard these two, the Carnival of Horrors, everything.
Could you hold that up a little better?
Yes.
We got Carnival Horrors and Return to
Carnival Horrors.
Yeah.
So these are the Choose Your Adventure ones, and I love that they followed that same theme. It's not at Horrorland, but it's the same exact kind of deal, There's something about a creepy, haunted kind of theme park that really just speaks to a kid when you go to one. And I always appreciated that Goosebumps really did it justice, They did the game as well. I think either of you mentioned that. There's a Horrorland game on PlayStation 2 and the Wii. I own it. I've never played it because my PlayStation 2 is broken right now. I did not know about it until maybe 2 or 3 years ago. But I've watched gameplay of it, and it's solid. It stands up to the book. They did such a good job, and I just really appreciate that they kept that whole thing going on. I wish they would have done it for the movie. It would have been really cool to see.
There's
this
also
is the best cover of the whole series for sure. Sorry to interrupt you. I just have to say this is the for sure best cover of the entire run. They knocked it out of the park. It is visceral to look at.
Yeah, beautiful, haunting, ominous. It's really got it all, and just such a simple image that really holds back and really gets your mind wondering, what's in this place? Is this an ordinary fair, like what I'm used to, or is there more behind it? Because we see the horrors trying to hide behind the sign, or either pounce on Alex, before the end of this episode. So you better watch out, Alex, because if your back is turned for too long, he might feed you to that wolf dog thing. What's his name? It's not Saber, because that was in Welcome to Camp Sniper, but the
Ripper.
Ripper, that's it.
Ripper.
Like Shredder, but not Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That was copyrighted already. Yeah. I mean, I'm very impressed with how Horrorland's legacy has expanded since the initial book, and even if it didn't, it still holds its own very well. With that being said, Greg, let's hear your side of the story. What is the lasting appeal about Laughing in the Dark that makes it great?
One, it's legitimately still creepy. I really do think it is. Not that I get scared of it now, but if I was not used to horror movies, I love horror movies. I watch them all the time, everything. It takes a lot to creep me out now. But if I wasn't familiar with it or anything and I watched it, it would be definitely creepy still. I mean, the makeup and the props are all super top notch, super high production value. I mean, I'm sure they didn't have much money for it, but they just did such a great job with the episode, and the writing is solid too. It's like a perfect storm of everything on that one single episode really just came through, because like we mentioned, the phone call that really hadn't been seen yet. I mean, not on a big scale because Scream was still years out. Yeah. And just the whole realization of when he picks up the phone and asks his friend, you need to tell your sister to put the phone down, and then she says, we only have one phone. It's just great writing all around. There's lots of just genuinely great scares. Yeah, the acting can be a little campy, everything, but it holds up so well. And I think the story of a creepy clown really can just get to everyone. You know, most people are creeped out of clowns to an extent, especially nowadays. I mean, a clown really is only known for being creepy with everything. I mean, it having a resurgence really helps to drive that kind of home.
Definitely.
And it's funny too, because when you bring up this episode, everyone will compare it to Horrorland. They really have them blended in their minds if they're not familiar with the two, like most of us are that we're watching this. There's just something about a haunted theme park that sticks out as being just believable enough when you're a kid, you know. And it's consistently one of like my favorite settings in TV and movies, everything, games. It's just something that's always stuck out to me as being so real and so supernatural at the same time. Just barely blending that between there. And Are You Afraid of the Dark with that episode, they did such a good job to really drive that home.
And to piggyback on what you had mentioned about how it's still scary, even if somebody watched it today who hadn't, if you as an adult go back and look at this episode again without the mindset that it's a clown, but with the mindset that it's a full-grown adult man,
oh my gosh,
stalking a child, it takes a whole different perspective. It is
gross
in every word.
Grosser than Aaron Taker's teeth in this episode.
Yes.
It's funny because I had never even considered that until you had mentioned it, and now it's just the idea of that is very, very unsettling.
Yes.
Yeah, all he needs to say is, I've got candy. Come into my van. Come into my spook house. Yeah. Any final remarks? Do you want to sling some mud at why your story's better? Do you want to say a Doyle rules or anything else before we wrap up?
My issue with Horrorland, I think, just lies in the fact that it's a lot more campy. The episode is really goofy, feels low budget and everything. And I like the episode, don't get me wrong, it's a good episode. But I think I'm a lot more familiar with watching Are You Afraid of the Dark because Goosebumps I didn't rewatch until I was a lot older. And it wasn't played as often as Are You Afraid of the Dark, at least not for when I would be watching TV. So for me, I'm so much more familiar with Laughing in the Dark. So when I go back and watch One Day at Horrorland, I'm like, this feels so lame almost, you know what I mean? Like you mentioned, it feels like Halloween Town, and Halloween Town's goofy, but at the same time I love the campiness because it's just so much a product of its time. Yep. The horrors, the costumes on the horrors, I think they actually do look pretty solid for what they are for a kid show that was on Fox in the morning. You know, they did as good as they could. Like you said, they could have done better. If they had bigger budget, they would have done better.
And also, if you go back and watch it again, especially part 2, there's a lot of those costumes, especially when they cut to the audience. And so the fact that they made, which is why you don't see as many theming throughout the park, because and just like a generic skull on top of a security camera. But they had to put a lot of money into all those costumes. So the fact that they have that many and they look as good as they do. That's impressive enough,
Yeah.
at least for me. And I will completely agree with you that this episode, the Horrorland, is far more campy and laid back and silly, which is why I was able to watch Goosebumps as a kid. I could, like I said, I was frightful. I could not watch Are You Afraid of the Dark? I tried a few times, and every time I did, terrified me. I couldn't watch it. Goosebumps, I never once got scared, but it had, that scary undertones, I guess you could say, and I enjoyed it for that. I was always very interested to watch scary things, but I couldn't follow through. Goosebumps was kind of my stepping off point to getting into horror things as I got older. But I have more memories of watching the entirety of Horrorland 1 and 2 than I do of watching Laughing in the Dark. I couldn't watch the full episode until I became an adult. And not to say that it scared me that bad, but because by the time and I've said this before in the podcast, 98, I got less interested in kids shows. And then I was into action movies and main horror movies. And then whenever I got back into Nickelodeon in the 90s as an adult, I need to watch Are You Afraid of the... I never did watch that episode, and then checked out. That was one of the first ones that I had to rewatch because, yes, it's that iconic. But and it's very much... It's very subjective to, and I know it's going to be subjective to Brett, but it will be to everybody. Of these two, it's probably going to fall down to the topic of lasting appeal. Which one did you appreciate the most? Did you like the darker undertone, the creepy, almost stalker vibes that you would get for Are You Afraid of the Dark, or the more lighthearted, campy, easygoing feeling, despite the constant impending doom upon the people? But it's a lot more campy, but that's the style of Goosebumps. I mean, you have a very campy style and a very dark style. Which one do you prefer? So you listeners, have already made up your mind before we even have our judgment. But going to our judgment, I now defer to Mr. Brett.
Thank you, Alex. And that was a very riveting filibuster you did for Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. It reminds me of that end speech. But anyways, wow, geez. Two really powerful arguments for two very similar yet different episodes who are titans in their own right in their own arenas of children's horror anthology in the 90s. Go figure. So let's tally up the votes, and then I'm going to explain why I did what I did and whether or not the listeners agree with me. Tough nuggets. This is how I view it. I am the master of Are You Afraid of the Dark? Bow down to me. No. You can disagree with me if you want. Just give me a sound argument. If you say like, "Oh, Are You Afraid of the Dark sucks. Your opinion sucks," well, that doesn't really hold any water. I welcome disagreements. I would love to hear your side or your perspective on why you like episode A over episode B and what really speaks to you. I love that. But this is my interpretation based on the evidence that I'm given for this. It's also my bias removed to the best of my ability. So we're going to do the recap here, category by category, and who won the point for each category, and then announce the winner at the end. So starting off, we had, I believe, main characters.
Yep.
This one, I really felt like it had to come down to like the breadth of the activity that the characters that we were presented with had to do in terms of like working together or advancing the story. And when I look at them side by side, I think, numbers really do help when there's more of them working together to push a plot versus just like two, kind of going back and forth with their own little dynamic. So I had to give this point to One Day at Horrorland because the Morris family really was cohesive in experiencing this theme park as if we were a family experiencing Disney World from hell, where they just got to go to all these different rides, and we saw a real full experience of what it was like to go to Horrorland, even if it was not exactly to our standards. Maybe we didn't want to go to the House of Mirrors. Maybe we wanted to go on a roller coaster. Obviously, they didn't have the budget for that, but what we got was still very much enjoyable and gave you that full theme park experience based on the fact that we got to see relatable family members go through each of these different experiences, whether it's like the parents going to the snack bar or the kids going to House of Mirrors or the coffin ride. It was great. I love seeing all their different reactions, and I loved how the kids, Lizzie and what's the boy's name? Lizzie and Luke. Yes, they also made appearances in previous Are You Afraid of the Dark Tales. So for those who don't know, Heather Brown, who plays Lizzie, actually played Jazz in The Tale of the Hatching from season 2. And Luke was played by Michael Callows, I believe, who played none other than the Frozen Ghost from season 2. So it was fun to see them in kind of different roles, but still undergo like spooky adversaries as a result. And that certainly helped their cause. So point one for One Day at Horrorland. Or actually, I should do it this side because I have that guy behind me. Point goes to One Day at Horrorland for main characters. Laughing in the Dark, I didn't like Josh that much. He was pretty hard to like. I felt the sister was just kind of there, other than like the tickling scene. What's going on there? I consider the Carnival Barker part of the villain category, so I'm not going to get to him just yet. But Josh and Ouija, I'm like, these are like kids that I see at like middle school, junior high that I don't really want to interact with. So seeing them here, it doesn't really do much to reel me in if it's like just about them. So that's that. Moving on to category number 2, which is villains. I had to give this one to Laughing in the Dark, mainly because, come on, it's Zeebo. He has this just ever-present presence that you just can't shake, whether you saw him way back in 1992 or you're just seeing Are You Afraid of the Dark for the first time in 2022. There's just something about that dummy that's like so damn creepy, and it really sears itself into your brain that you can't shake. And I'm sure it lodged into the nightmares of many 90s kids who are listening to our podcast today. I really love how it plays around with the idea of, well, who exactly is Zeebo when it comes down to it? Is it the dummy who's coming to life? Is it the carnival barker who might be playing some tricks in like another shape-shifting form? Is it just the disembodied spirit that we see at the end who like receives the nose so that it can put it back on the dummy and maintain the status quo? The fact that it keeps you guessing throughout the entire episode, and even now, I really think speaks to the testament of this character's power, despite it being very simple and confined to this episode. Although we do see numerous mention of Zeebo throughout Are You Afraid of the Dark in terms of like reference, Don't Be a Zeeb, Zeebo's Big House video game from Crimson Clown, the other clown episode, and even the amusement park in Silver State to a degree. So I think for its staying power, its iconic, terrifying look, and the fact that Alex couldn't watch this episode as a kid really speaks volumes over it. The One Day Horrorland horrors, they're fine. I like the makeup enough. It's kind of in the uncanny valley for me, and it doesn't quite fit Tim Jacobus' vision, which I think looks great on all the Goosebumps covers. But something about it just doesn't feel right to me. Something about the costumes feel a little too sculpted, too plasticky, that kind of lent itself more to the cartoonish side of things, which, I mean, that is Goosebumps styles blending cartoon and horror due to R.L. Stine's writing background as like a joke book writer before doing, Fear Street and Goosebumps and everything else related to that. But it's a little hard to sit through at times. So I got to give it to Zeebo and the Carnival Barker for their sense of mystique and larger than life personality that just transcends this episode, period.
Yeah, no contest there. I agree with that.
Yeah. So the score is 1-1 tied up right now. So category number 3, we're going to do story. And this was an interesting turn for me because I really liked how One Day at Horrorland had this like different tonal shift between the two parts. It went from like more sinister and thriller-like to kind of campy game show, but also, some thrills and terror peppered in throughout the second half. I really liked that, despite it being radically different between the parts. I really like just getting used to this new setting with the family as they're experiencing the different rides of the story. and just like being stuck in the middle of nowhere. Like when I watched this episode in preparation for this Patreon bonus episode, I couldn't help but think of like the dad as Mark Griswold from National Lampoon's Vacation with all his kids and like getting to Wally World and it just being totally different than what he expected and just punching that moose in the nose. Although he didn't end up punching any horrors, but a horror did punch him in the arm during the snack booth scene, which I thought was funny. And then for Laughing in the Dark, it's like, I mean, it's a ghost story that's elevated based on the source material, because for those of you who are big fans of Are You Afraid of the Dark, you'll know that Laughing in the Dark is actually a literary antecedent of the classic, like I think it dates to the 60s, maybe even further. It's like a tall tale called like The Golden Arm, where it's basically, you know, you steal an item from something, the keeper of it is awakened and it will haunt the person until they give it back so that they can return to the status quo. You know, different variables, I mean, different characters, same variables. And I really think, you know, despite the fact that it derives itself from, you know, another more classic story, it still holds up well in its own right, because it has enough of immersive plots, you know, with these grade school kids who are like betting each other to like, you know, steal the nose. I bet you can't do it. Bet your chicken, because, you know, these ghost stories say that if you steal it, he'll come alive. And it kind of takes a life of its own once Josh does, you know, go through with the act to prove Ouija wrong. And it really gives a viewer the sense of dread, like, oh, shoot, what's going to happen now? This has never happened before. And we don't see him, you know, directly, but he does make his way towards his house and even almost into his bedroom. And, you know, whether you played into the psychological horror that was going on here or not, there's no doubt about that this is like some, you know, stellar triple S class storytelling. So believe it or not, despite my raving reviews of, you know, Laughing in the Dark, I'm going to give this a draw, because they are both very different interpretations of like an amusement park story involving kids. But I liked what they brought to the table in their own way. One's a little bit more sinister. One's more like a balance between sinister, thriller, and campy. And then we're going to move on to use of the amusement park theme. I think this is where the tables turn here, because Horrorland, you got like a whole smorgasbord of like the entire horror theme park here, versus Laughing in the Dark, you just got really one ride. You could argue that Laughing in the Dark is more immersive in its experience, because you get different aspects of the spook house that you get to see with Josh as you go through. You know, you get the vampire dummy, you get the Frankenstein dummy, you get the little funhouse mirror moment, you get this like disorienting arrow thing that leads into the core of the spook house where you have to find the right door to escape. And I love that. I would love to see like a VR experience of that somehow, you know, in this technologically.
I never thought about that.
Yeah, just to like be in Josh's shoes for a moment, even if it's just for a novelty. So I really like the immersive of that. But where One Day in Horrorland lacks depth, it makes up for in breadth, and you really feel like you went through the entire theme park with the Morris family. So because of that, and it, you know, I didn't have to pay a lofty admission to go there like I did for Disneyland. I got to give it to One Day in Horrorland, even though the Spook House ride is a very strong ride in its own right. So that leaves us with our last category, which is lasting appeal. So far we got One Day Horrorland 1, 2, 3, and then Laughing in the Dark with 2. Lasting appeal, you know, with a little bit of scariness thrown in. I would say this is more about how it resonates with the fans and less of it being a memorable episode, if that makes any sense, because it really just comes down to people experiencing the story, remembering it, loving it, and retelling it to other people to keep the spirit alive. And I really feel like Laughing in the Dark embodies this wholeheartedly, like no other story. Not only, you know, any other story in Goosebumps, but any other story in Are You Afraid of the Dark, or even 90s horror anthologies. I would even extend that to like Tales from the Crypt, Tales from the Dark Side, X-Files too, just because of its unexpectedly massive impact when it first aired. Again, it has that element of like mystique. There's something you can't quite describe about, but because all the parts are in the right place and it had the right timing, it continues to endure today. And more than any other episode, even heavy hitters like Dead Man's Float, Night Shift, Midnight Madness, among countless others of the Are You Afraid of the Dark universe, people always come back to Laughing in the Dark first and foremost. And One Day at Horrorland, it still holds its own in its own right, as we talked about before, with like expanding into, various other Goosebumps books offshoots, and even having a two-parter to have a little bit more time to flesh out its story. But it doesn't quite pack that punch that Laughing in the Dark does. And I don't think it ever will, just because of the nature of the show being a little more of a soft blow for people who are interested in horror anthologies. So a point goes to Laughing in the Dark for this. And it's kind of an unfair fight just because it's kind of like, a billionaire versus a millionaire. Yes, they're both rich, but one's gonna have more spending power at the end of the day. And believe it or not, with that tally, this is a Splat Attack first. We have a draw because the score is 3-3. So I'm gonna have to do a special animation now where like the verses where they just shake hands with the gloves instead of like punch the other one out of the way to announce the winners.
Well done.
Congratulations, guys. You were super awesome at defending both of your titles, so much so that I had to give you a draw. These are both great episodes in their own right, and I urge all of our Gackoids here on Patreon to watch both of these episodes and decide for themselves what they enjoy more.
Well done, Greg. Well done.
Thank you. I really appreciate you guys having me on here. This was really fun.
Yeah, but don't go away just yet. We got one more ride for you because we are going to play our Versus exclusive segment called Rename Game. So for Rename Game, those who are not familiar with it, what we actually do here is we take our titles of each of these episodes that we compare against each other, and we kind of rework them to see how they'd be better fitting for either like a modern audience today, or if we think we can come up with something that's more conducive to what the story is about that it wasn't named for. So how it goes is that each of you will rename your own story, and then the judge, whoever it is for the episode, gets to rename both. So we'll have 2 titles for One Day at Horrorland and 2 titles for Laughing in the Dark in total. So starting off, I will go with, for renaming Laughing in the Dark, I will rename it The Tale of the Spookhouse Spectre. Because I feel like, it's a ghost story about a clown, and he resides in the spook house, and whatever form he chooses to take, you're not really sure. And I really like the alliteration going on here whilst keeping things kind of spooky. For One Day in Horrorland, I will go with One Horrific Ride. And it just describes the journey that I've had going through the episode. It felt like a roller coaster with many twists and turns, thrills, chills, and spills at every corner. And, I want to keep in line with the whole horror theming, hence why I added horror in the title. Just, adjusting it and tweaking it a bit. So, Alex, what would you rename One Day in Horrorland?
For my episode, first of all, falling through the trap door. Okay. The coffins falling through the rapids. 3, ending the episode on a cliffhanger with them about to fall over. And also, speaking of the theme park that I had mentioned earlier, Holiday World, their log ride is actually called this. And I thought it was quite fitting for this episode, Frightful Falls.
Ooh, interesting. Definitely makes me think of like log rides, scary ones. And Greg, what would you rename Laughing in the Dark, or The Tale of the Laughing in the Dark?
I couldn't really think of anything that would sum it up, at least off the top of my head, but something would have to be done about like the door. I think you'd really have to focus on that there's something behind that door. I don't know. The tale of the mystery behind door number 9.
Or door number 6, you mean?
Is it 6?
Yeah.
Well, it's the same, just flipped.
Workshop it with us. We got time. I can edit it.
The tale of door number 6.
Yeah, Tale of Door number 6. I don't know. I haven't really given this any thought.
Tale of the Crimson Door, maybe? Or that'd be too close to Crimson Clown.
Yeah, Crimson Clown. Yeah.
It's kind of perfect as it is, but I still want to like twist your brain to see if we can squeeze out anything. The Tale of
Stolen Nose.
The Smoky Spirit.
Yeah, that would work too.
The Tale of the Purple Balloon.
Use Spectre. That is such a good word to use.
Thank you. I mean, you can reuse it if you want. There's no hard and fast rule saying you can't.
Oh, then Smoking Spectre for sure.
Okay. Is that your final answer then?
Yes, I'll go with that.
Okay. All right. So now that you know your titles, Gackoids, weigh in the comments below of this video or audio only episode. Which title do you like best? Let us know on our Patreon page, patreon.com/Splat Attack, and we'll share the results in a future episode. Probably the next Are You Afraid of the Dark versus Goosebumps in season 3, most likely. So just to recap again, for those who are listening instead of watching, we have for Laughing in the Dark, the Tale of the Spook House Spectre. Alex had, he didn't get to rename that. Greg had the Tale of the Smoky Spectre? Smoking Spectre. And then for One Day at Horrorland, I had One Horrific Ride, and Alex had Frightful Falls. So weigh in with us which titles you like, or even if you have one of your own to share, let us know in the comments. Well, I think we're going to wrap up this episode. That was another great versus, wouldn't you say, Alex?
Oh yes, two great episodes, and that's always the best opportunity whenever you've got two really good episodes that have a good competition against each other. Did not expect that to end in a tie.
Me either. Yeah, I mean that just goes to show you that both of these still stand the test of time today. But we're just gonna let our Gackoids know. Here's our closing question: Which episodes do you vote for more and why? And also, is there an Are You Afraid of the Dark Goosebumps pairing that you'd like to see in a future episode? Let us know at splatattack2021@gmail.com if you want to email us, or let us know in the comments on Patreon, since this is a Patreon bonus episode. Really, however you want to contact us is all okay with us. Just let us know, give us some ideas, and we'll make it happen in a future season. All right. Thank you so much, Greg, for joining us today. We really had a lot of fun, duking it out together and hearing your perspective on Laughing in the Dark.
Yeah, thanks, Greg.
Yeah. Is there anything you want to say before we go? Greg?
What do you think I am? Some kind
Are we
of
losing?
clown?
Greg?
Hello?
Where did Greg go?
You don't think Zeebo went chasing after him, did you?
I mean, I did give him the nose that I stole. That I was kind of waving around my finger not too long ago. Maybe Zeebo was actually coming after me, and now he's after him. So, Greg, don't go in that spook house. You're gonna be trapped in there. Oh crap! I'm gonna be sued for this.
maybe he went to return it so that way he could be free of the curse.
Let's hope so that he can come back for another episode with us.
Absolutely.
Well, let's hope Greg makes it out alive. We're rooting for you, and watch out for clown ghosts next time you go to a carnival this fall season. With that being said, Alex, will you drain the slime tank for us, please? Let's try and get out of this amusement park before the Horrorland horrors catch us.
Aye, Co-Captain. I might have to take the escape hatch through the Hall of Mirrors.
Good idea. Yeah, that seems a little bit safer than running away from Ripper. All right, guys. Splat you later.
Bye.
Reprise the theme song and roll the credits.
Hard to believe, folks, but it's time to say goodbye.
Nighty-night.
Hey, check us out next time for more adventure and another great legend of the Hidden Temple.
What'll we do till then?
Chill for a couple. We'll be back.
You're on, Nick.
And it was time for the superhero to move on.
I declare this meeting of the Midnight Society closed.
Bye-bye.
No way, Weege. You're not scaring me. Who's there?
I feel like someone's watching us.
Sorry, my lad. I didn't mean to scare you.
Say hello to River!